Unfortunately for the haters, the women have woken up to our power as gatekeepers of humanity, as gatekeepers of the future. So unless things change for the gatekeepers, we're gonna keep gatekeeping. Hey, bestie. Welcome to the Spoiled Girly Support Group podcast, where we talk about how to get that bag while also securing your own bag. I'm your host, Elle, and let's get into it. On today's episode, we are talking about the baby bust, the baby Mageddon, which is essentially the drop in birth rates that we are seeing not just nationwide, but also worldwide. So whatever your stance is on motherhood, whether you are a mother, you want to be a mother, or you are opting out, you want to be the cool aunt, whatever it is, there's no denying that the current socioeconomic landscape is currently not conducive to child rearing. From the current economic situation, pushing up the prices of all the costs associated with raising kids and having kids, to the lack of community that a lot of mothers, especially new mothers, are experiencing, the lack of support for mothers emotionally, mentally, everythingly. It is no surprise that we are seeing a shift in priorities, with the younger generations focusing more on their personal development, their career advancement, and their financial independence. In today's video, we are also going to be unpacking not only the issues that are making parenthood less appealing, but also the response of certain societies, certain ruling bodies to this baby Mageddon, to this baby bust, and what we can personally do to support mothers. Because here's my beef with a lot of these issues. We can talk about them all day long. We can talk about the macro factors that factor into whatever we're seeing right now. But at the end of the day, we can only control ourselves. So in our day-to-day, let's try to make the changes that we can to affect the world that we want to see and live in. Because whether or not you agree with the falling birth rates, we are seeing a lot of mothers, especially young mothers, especially new mothers, struggling with their current state of life, struggling with affording basic necessities for them and their children, struggling with a lot of the mental and psychological and emotional issues that come about with pregnancy, with childbirth. A lot of mothers are suffering. So today's class is to pinpoint exactly why that's happening and why the current responses from certain ruling bodies of societies is mostly blaming women for the drop in birth rates when the environment is not conducive to a high birth rate. Okay, now we have a lot to cover, but before we get into it, I need you to hit the like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you never miss a Spoiled Girly episode. With that being said, let's get into it. Today's video was inspired by the She Deserved the Purse trend on TikTok. And it's basically a trend where women film themselves going to the grocery store and putting $100 or whatever amount of money into cans of baby formula. And the premise is that mothers who would then buy the baby formula would get a nice surprise, when they take it home and they open it. Because like I said, a lot of mothers are struggling to provide the basic necessities for their children. And have you been to the grocery store and looked at the price of formula these days? Yeah, it's not cheap. Okay, so, and a lot of people will say,
oh, breastfeeding is free, this and that.
but there's a lot of issues and barriers that would prevent a woman from breastfeeding. Obviously, a lot of women would want to do that, but for a lot of women, it's just not an option. And this trend was basically this wholesome trend, one of those trends that kind of restore my faith in humanity. We did that. And it's just so sweet that this became a thing. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, if you do a good act and you film it, it kind of undoes the good act. But this is kind of like the ALS bucket challenge, where it became a trend to dump a bucket of cold water or just water on yourself to raise funds for ALS. And it's one of those things, it's yeah, it is an internet trend. Yes, it is performative. But at the end of the day, there's a positive impact on the people that they were raising funds for. One commenter even wrote that the money that she found in one of her purchases was enough to alleviate the stress of motherhood that day.
She said, I've actually found this one time in a store by me. I was on WIC, could barely afford groceries, and when we got formula, we found $100 with it. The stress that was lifted knowing we were eating that day.
Other women also shared the other ways that they've shown to support the women around them.
When I was at my worst, the cashier noticed and accidentally counted back the wrong change in my favor. I will never forget her. I ate that night because of her.
Someone said,
I would always forget forget to scan a few items when I worked at the thrift store whenever I saw a mom or dad with their kids.
Someone said,
When I was a checkout operator for a supermarket, I would pretend to scan nappies and formula.
I mean, it's kind of sad that this is a thing, that child rearing has gotten so expensive. And I'm wondering, like, has it always been this way? And a bunch of other people talked about their personal experiences, whether past or present, to communicate how impactful this trend is. Someone said,
Literally sobbing, I couldn't afford half of these things when I had a baby at 19. You are wonderful.
someone else said,
I was a mom at 19 who wanted the purse. This trend brings so much warmth to my heart.
someone else said,
As a mother, this makes me want to sob. It is so hard to get stuff for yourself on a tight budget. When you have kids, you want to give the world and so much more too. So for all those moms who find that, I thank you on behalf of all the mothers who just need to pick me up sometimes.
So you may be wondering, like, why is this trend called the she deserve the purse trend? It's basically because mothers, yeah, they probably have the money to buy this, and that necessities for their kids, but a lot of mothers, they always put themselves second, third, fourth, fifth on the list of priorities, so they never get to buy whatever it is that they wanted for themselves. And we're gonna get into this, especially the American culture of total motherhood, as per a brilliant writer that we're gonna cover later. But it's just very interesting to point that out, that the she deserve the purse trend is going viral in America, in the United States of America, because we do have this culture of total motherhood, where when you become a mother, everything is about your kids, and you as a person become secondary. And we can't talk about the she deserve the purse trend without talking about how it has been co-opted and ruined by people who feel left out because they're not struggling mothers, namely men asterisk, who have resorted to destroying cans of formula at the grocery store.
Another counter movement targeting these women and the joy they're experiencing. By going through stores now and completely destroying baby sections and essential goods that mothers would usually purchase. Because these grown men have come to the conclusion that that's not really fair. And so again, instead of taking the time to focus on themselves and maybe starting a movement to support other men, or doing absolutely anything productive and helpful, they've decided once again to just take it out on women instead. Because I guess for some reason that's just easier. So they've started a counter trend, videotaping themselves going through and destroying these sections. And then they have the audacity to sit around and wonder why birth rates are dropping to an alarmingly low rate and more women are single now than ever. Maybe it's because y'all literally throw a fit at even the thought of women being happy and having community.
And let's call it for what it is. They're stealing the money that is meant to go to the mothers who are going to buy the formula. And it's just so sad. And so people have been ransacking cans of formula now, so much so that stores have started locking up formula, putting nets around them, essentially ending participation in this trend, which is pretty sad because it was supposed to be like this wholesome, lighthearted thing. And then obviously people who shouldn't be out in society are ruining it for them, ruining it for all of us. So annoying. Like, these are literally grown people going out of their way to take the money intended for mothers or just solo parents in general, claiming that they deserve it more.
For what? You deserve it for what?
And this TikTok user brings a valid point.
It's crazy because this trend doesn't exclude men, it's just most likely to benefit a woman. There might be a single dad out there who benefits from the money too, and that's great.
Exactly. Like, the way that is called the she deserve the purse trend, it's a she because it highlights how women are, for the most part, the primary caretakers of children. They're the primary shoppers. And if a man is also the one doing the shopping, doing the primary caretaking, they're gonna get the money too, Like, the money will not vanish as soon as a man's hands touch them. And another user also wrote, they do realize that just because the trend started with a she doesn't mean the charity only goes for women, right? If a single father is also struggling, that money can be his too. Exactly. Like, I'm just so convinced that there are some people who can't stand the idea that other people want to make it easier for women. They can't stand the idea that women are protecting, supporting, and uplifting each other, because they are so starved of attention. They are so starved of affection. They are so starved of positive interaction with people that they will look for attention, whether it's positive or negative, just to be paid attention to, just for their existence to be validated, just to feel something. And that's really sad, but that's not really our problem. Like, if you're going to engage in society in a negative way just so you can feel something, just so people pay attention to you, like, go touch grass. Okay, literally, go touch grass. be one with nature. Like, nature is healing. And it's so interesting because instead of making a point about dads deserving the purse or dads deserving whatever it is that men like, then maybe start their own trend of putting money in places where dads are more likely to find them, you know? Like, go to a sporting goods store and put them in, like, I don't know, boys' shoes or something. Like, why are these people so violent and so destructive? Like, I can't. So annoying. So like I said, because of the destruction that a lot of people have been wreaking on the formula section at grocery stores, some stores like Walmart began putting nets on their baby products. And it really rubs me the wrong way because the caption, it seems to implicitly blame the people who filmed themselves tucking cash into baby products rather than focusing on the people who are damaging the items in search for money. Okay, so annoying. Long story short, this trend just highlights the issues that women face when they become mothers, specifically the financial issues and also the lack of community support. Okay, mothers all over the country, they are lacking the support that they need to raise their children, so much so that a video of a stranger hiding cash in baby products can bring them to tears. And because of this, more and more women are seeing this as a sign to not have children. Since 2007, the nation's birth rate has been declining 2% each year on average. And contrary to early speculations about there being a panini baby boom, the panini only accelerated this decline even further, with birth rates falling by 4% in 2022, which the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention noted as the largest annual decline in the number of births since 1973. Harmeet Kaur wrote for CNN, demographers point to a number of factors driving this phenomenon: economic insecurity, political uncertainty, shifting gender norms, and a lessening stigma around the choice to remain child-free. Though the laid bare just how little support families in the US receive from the government when it comes to childcare and other obligations. Some women had already made up their minds before then. And Amy Blackstone, a sociologist from the University of Maine, added to this sentiment. The panini has really revealed to us how poorly we support parents in the US. We've come to see the truth that we've always known but never speak out loud, which is that parenting is really hard and we don't really support parents in that role. So I saw a lot of this during the panini because when families had to stay home, children had to stay home from school, parents had to work from home without having access to the childcare that they would usually have access to. Parents had to work and perform childcare at the same time. And a lot of people, whether or not you were in that situation yourself, you saw other people do it. Like, I could not imagine how other people did it during that time. Like, it just magnified how very little support we give parents nowadays. And there's always the sentiment of attacking people who choose not to have children, but honestly, people who know in themselves that they're not ready to have children or don't ever want to have children, I feel like we should be commending them more because good for you. Like, a lot of people, they know they're going to be bad parents if they ever become parents, so they opt out entirely. I know a lot of people who know in themselves that their parents should not have been parents ever. Like, who let these people have children, you know? So it's very commendable when people opt out all by themselves. Like, they know that it's not for them. They're not going to be thriving and vibing when they have children. Like, why, you know? So this attacking people for not wanting to have children, I feel like it's so misguided. And we're going to get into this as to why child-free people are being attacked in traditional media. Okay, let's get into it, okay? If you are into economics and this and that, like, a lot of ruling bodies of societies, they are so concerned about the drop in birth rates because it means a lesser amount of workforce, labor force. How are we going to fund our retirement systems when there's not a lot of workers funding the retirement systems, and now we can't pay out funds to these old people who paid into the system? So long story short, instead of asking why fewer people or fewer women are choosing to have children, because let's be real, the decision to have children is on the woman. Okay, we are the creators of life. We are the gatekeepers of the future. We are the gatekeepers of humanity. And people are increasingly seeing that, like, women are the gatekeepers. We decide. So you need to please us if we are to do whatever you want us to do, you know, if we are to conform to whatever it is program that you want us to get with. So instead of shaming women and making it a fault to be child-free, how about we question what kind of environments we are bringing children into? What kind of systems are we perpetuating that makes having children so hard and so painful and so penalizing? Okay, like, for a lot of women who don't have as much resources, like, having a child is a penalty. It sets you back, okay? It's not this beautiful, joyous thing that women with resources can experience, okay? But unfortunately, some people in positions of power, they are too fixated on the projected repercussions of the birth rate crisis on the economy. Popular among the tech bros, the pro-natalist movement, it encourages more Americans to have more children, as the Telegraph put it, to save mankind. And one popular figure of the pro-natalist movement is Elon Musk, who has consistently made known his stance, frequently discussing the declining birth rates in interviews and public appearances, and even going so far as to call it the biggest danger civilization faces. And reportedly, Musk also donated $10 million to the University of Texas at Austin, establishing the Population Wellbeing Initiative, which aims to research the implications of low fertility. I have a hot take or a hot prediction that's gonna happen, and it is also already happening in big expensive cities such as New York. Children are increasingly becoming a wealth signal, and as we have discussed in a past class, daughters are also becoming a wealth signal because a lot of wealthy Silicon Valley parents, they are increasingly choosing to only have daughters. So my hot prediction is that literally not a century, a few decades from now, we are going to be seeing big families of mostly or only daughters as the ultimate wealth signal. So I feel like Nostradamus, like that's my hot prediction. And going worldwide,
Mr. Worldwide,
this rising concern is not exclusive to the West. In Japan, the governments of Nanmoku, a village with the country's oldest population, are offering financial incentives to attract young people in hopes of increasing the birth rate and keeping the village on the map. This year, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida also rolled out a new program to increase births by extending monthly allowances to all children under 18 regardless of income, free college for families with 3 children, and fully paid parental leave. However, Kuniko Inoguchi, who was appointed in 2005 as the country's first minister responsible for gender equality and birth rate, noted that the constraint on would-be parents is no longer money, but time. With that, she has pressed the government and businesses to adopt a 4-day work week. Inoguchi states, if you're a government official or a manager of a big corporation, you should not worry over questions of salary now, but that in 20 years' time, you will have no customers, no clients, no applicants to the self-defense forces. But if the conversation about increasing the birth rate primarily tests on economic-centric questions like where will a nation's economic growth come from if companies have less workers to recruit and less customers to sell to, or how can a smaller workforce afford to sustain the pensions of a much larger retired population, then I think we're missing the point entirely. Like, why is this a world that you even want to live in anyway? Okay? People aren't opting out of parenthood because they don't care about the future of society. Maybe they do. But for people to care about the future of a society, it has to be a society worth caring about. Like, a lot of people whose needs are not met in real time, like right now, they don't have the bandwidth to care about the future. Okay? So people's decisions to have children are about the current state of affairs right now. Okay? How can they care about something in the future when they are so busy caring about the present? Okay? And the solution to this crisis, this birth rate crisis, isn't to pressure people to have more children, to future-proof the economy when people's individual, personal, familial economies are in jeopardy. Okay? So that's not the solution. The solution is to address the societal and systemic issues that are deterring people from being parents in the first place. Okay? So like pressuring people to have children to secure the economy, okay, like make it make sense. Interestingly, and I know that these pronatalist people would really hate this, situations in other countries also illustrate how societal issues are not the only deterrent to having children. In Monica Hesse's article for the Washington Post, Hesse notes that women in places that allow them access to birth control, access to education, and access to jobs have overwhelmingly fewer children. I wonder why. Like, it's because women are the ones incurring the biological cost of having children on top of taking the primary role of caretaking and caregiving, while the men do what, okay? And such is the case even in places like Taiwan, Russia, Italy, and Greece, where governments are literally paying women to reproduce, as well as in South Korea, where the government has notably been addressing the issue from every possible angle, including building a high-speed rail system designed to shorten commutes and make more time for family life. And I watched a video on how South Korea is doing really well for parents, new parents, and especially mothers from
Cho nu ni guk sarams.
YouTube video. I'll show it here. here, but her video series on having babies in South Korea was just like this eye-opening thing about how it is so different from what we have here in the States. Like South Korea is literally doing the most to boost their birth rates. Like we're talking free or subsidized programs for childcare, for healthcare for the mother and the children. Like they're really doing the most to support these new mothers. Hesse goes on to write, it's almost as if when women are given the chance to control their own reproduction and when they have the education to have the option of working outside of the home, and when their society welcomes their contributions in fields beyond motherhood, and when they are paid for their work, it's almost as if leveling the playing field between women and men has allowed women to truly choose how many children they really want to have. And that answer for a lot of women seems to be fewer. And some demographers see this shift as part of a second demographic transition. As a society, it seems like we are recalibrating our values, putting less emphasis on marriage and parenthood. And you would think that in the US, certain incentives would be put in place to encourage women to have children, kind of like how South Korea is doing it, kind of like how a lot of other governments are doing it to incentivize women to have children and more of them. But no, the current tactic is to shame women and also to put in place legal maneuvers to get women to have children. Moving on, you already know that the vibe here is all about figuring out how to make the world a better place for ourselves as women. So let's talk about the problems that we are facing and create solutions on how to fix them, or at least make them suck a little less. Although you yourself may have absolutely zero desire to be a mother, you probably know someone who does or who is already in the process of becoming one or is already a mother themselves. So today's class is to arm ourselves with the knowledge to support ourselves and other women. So instead of focusing on the macro narrative about this doomsday vibe about women no longer wanting to have children, how about we help women who are already mothers right now, okay? Like how about we help the women in our communities like right now? So let's get into the first problem. Number one is the collapse of the village. So you've probably heard this saying before, it takes a village to raise a child. And unfortunately, with cities growing larger, housing denser, and connections more digital, it seems that our actual villages are getting smaller and many families are finding it more challenging to access the resource of a community that earlier societies enjoyed. And the solution sounds simple. Build your social network, make friends, and really create these deep, meaningful friendships with people who share your values and also are closer to you geographically, because they will be your village. And like I said, it seems like it's a very simple fix, but it's hard because we are also in the midst of a friendship recession. The friendship recession was coined in a 2021 American Perspective survey when researchers found that 12% of Americans reported having no friends. And in the following year, Sapien Labs' Mental State of the World in 2022 report, which involves more than 407,000 participants from 64 countries, also found that people's social self has nosedived over the past 12 months. And this metric refers to one's ability to maintain meaningful friendships and connections. Data from the UK showed similar results. A report by think tank Onward revealed that around 20% of 18 to 34-year-olds had one or even had no close friends. The friendship app Peanut also found that 76% of women felt they had fewer close friends in 2023 than they had the year before. It's even been said that Gen Z is the loneliest generation. But just because there's a friendship recession, and if you are part of this friendship recession, it doesn't mean that your social life is doomed. And I can see how being a mom would make it even more challenging for women to maintain friendships because their new identity might come with new limitations and a shift in priorities. So if you're a mom or you are close friends with someone who is a mom, then please welcome inconvenience in your dynamics. Like be more accommodating because they are doing something big. And if that's not your goal, if you're not into that, like that's perfectly fine. That's your boundary. But for me personally, if any of my close friends become moms, and some of them already are, like I think it's cute. That's your friend living out their dreams, you know? So if you can't support that dream, even though it's not the same as yours, are you really friends though? And I feel like I don't even have to like tell people this because women are so good at friendships. Like we are so good at friendships, like we grow old with our girlfriends. I love that for us. And if you need a bit more encouragement for the moms, let these comments on the TikTok video reassure you that people want to show up for you. Someone said,
Please inconvenience me. I love and care about you.
someone else said,
It's what friends are for. We are supposed to help each other and care for one another. Drives me crazy that people don't get that.
and someone else said,
I'm always begging friends and family to ask me for favors, but hyper individualism seems to be prevailing. I want to bring back the village, but I don't know how.
Another reason why mothers are having a hard time is the ambiguity in men's roles in parenthood. Earlier, we touched on how one's financial status also plays a role in how they may or may not want to have kids. And a research article draws 2 decades worth of earnings and employment data for hundreds of thousands of families. And what they found was concerning. Upon tracking parents' pay for 6 years, the researchers found that working women see their incomes cut in half on average after having children, and their earnings remain depressed for years thereafter. And additionally, the data also showed that women who, prior to giving birth, were their family's primary breadwinners, they tend to pause their careers and endure huge income loss. And according to Almond, this finding undercuts a theory that posits that couples strategically decide that the lower earning partner, which was historically the mother, shoulder the burden of child rearing. Almond states that the data suggests that many dads who ought to be stepping up and taking care of the child care for the economic well-being of their families aren't doing so. And this lack of initiative from dads and husbands, they perpetuate this harmful gender stereotype that housework is still very much a woman's job. In an article for The Ethicalist, it's manic juggling a career with a family. But the really annoying thing in all of this is that my husband Harry doesn't contribute anything to running the house or looking after the children. It's as if his presence alone is enough. He pops in home when he isn't working, seeing friends and playing squash and football. There's food in the fridge, his clothes are washed and ironed, and his children are loved and cared for. He thinks his time out of work is his to do as he pleases. She sounds like a married single mom, okay? She forgot the X in front of the husband. And what Lucy experiences, and what so many other women undoubtedly experience in their own families, is a concept that's been around since the 1980s, and it's called the second shift. And the second shift refers to the unpaid work that women do at home, which includes taking care of the children, domestic cleaning, shopping for the household, and so much more. And it's called the second shift because they do their first shift at their W-2, 1099, whatever kind of job, and then they come home and they have their second shift, which is taking care of the home. While men, even if they're earning the same amount in their first shifts, in their first job, the men, they come home after their first shift and they just put their feet up and they're done.
Oh, I'm so tired. I had to work all day.
But women had to work too, okay? And I get that it has historical basis because historically women were expected to stay at home and look after their house and the children while their husbands went off to work. So they were working too, but in a different setting, okay? And the thing is, today, a lot of women are no longer housewives. They also have careers that are just as demanding as their partners. And unfortunately, the domestic burden still rests primarily on the women's shoulders, okay? And this has real mental, physical, and emotional repercussions on women. Constantly juggling responsibilities can lead to tiredness, stress, and an overwhelming feeling of being put upon. It can result in burnout, anxiety, and a sense of inadequacy. Physically, the stress of trying to do everything may manifest in sleep problems, headaches, and compromised immune function, and could lead to long-term health issues. It also leads to resentment and frustration because your partner can't see the effect all this responsibility is having on you. And aside from socioeconomic changes such as better parental leave, affordable childcare options, and policies that normalize flexible working hours for parents, there's also a need for a cultural shift in how we perceive these domestic responsibilities if we are really to solve the birth rate crisis. And the next problem I want to get into, and I already kind of hinted at it in the beginning, is the American culture of total motherhood. Mothers, specifically American mothers, they tend to self-sacrifice for the sake of their children. And I feel like that is normal when you become a mother because it's no longer about you, but at the same time, it has harmful effects on you as the mother and also on your children. In Pamela Druckerman's book, Bring Up Bebe, One American Mother Discovers the Wisdom of French Parenting, Druckerman notes the differences between American and French parenting, and the most glaring of which is that unlike French parents, American parents, they seem to lose their individualities once their kids are born. And in the book Perfect Madness, Motherhood in the Age of Anxiety, author Judith Warner describes America's culture of total motherhood. Too many of us now allow ourselves to be defined by motherhood and direct every ounce of our energy into our children. This sounds noble on the surface, but in fact, it's doing no one, not ourselves, our children, any good. Because when we lose ourselves in our mommy selves, we experience this loss as depression. When we disempower ourselves in our mommy selves, we experience this weakness as anxiety. When we deschmexualize ourselves in our mommy selves, it leads us to feel dead in our skin. All this places an undue burden upon our children. By making them the be-all and end-all of our lives, by breaking down the boundaries between ourselves and them so thoroughly, by giving them so much power within the family when they're very small, we risk overwhelming them psychologically psychologically and ill preparing them socially for the world of other children and eventually other adults. Nursery school and kindergarten teachers are already complaining that our children are so indulged, made so royal at home that they come to school lacking compassion for others and with real problems functioning socially. And this notion that you have to become this self-sacrificing martyr for your child is even more prevalent in women because women are the ones who are socialized and made to believe to love and care and track the needs and desires of others. So when women think or do something that doesn't align with this societal and cultural expectation, such as not prioritizing their kids at any given moment, a lot of women experience this thing called mom guilt. And this mom guilt can unfortunately show up in a lot of ways. For instance, a TikTok user shared how not pumping in the wee hours of the morning due to exhaustion made her feel guilty.
I cried because I didn't pump at 3:30 a.m. like I was supposed to because I was so tired. I felt so guilty the next day. Why?
Responders of psychotherapist Nero Feliciano's Instagram poll also shared their own triggers. Many working moms responded that they felt it most when work prevented them from attending their kids' events, whereas many stay-at-home moms felt bad for not doing enough around the house, even though they're often at home. Other moms said they felt guilty when they encounter another mom who seems to be more successful at balancing their many responsibilities. However, Druckerman illustrates how a certain level of detachment between the French and their parent identities is not only apparent but beneficial. French parents don't seem to have the same guilt that so many American parents do, and they have no qualms about putting their children to bed, firmly explaining that the evening is for adults, and then expecting their child to remain in bed. They go on vacations without their children, and when they have play groups, the children play together and the parents talk calmly and separately, not breaking up arguments or sitting on the floor with Legos. This sounds very pleasant because I have been in a lot of situations where there's a lot of children running around, and you could really see the American culture of total motherhood. Like moms and dads also, like they're just so hyper focused on their kids that it's so hard for them to talk with other adults because they're like so into their kids. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But then I get this sentiment from mothers specifically about how they wish that they could just have like an adult time. And that's missing from a lot of American parents because we do have this culture of total motherhood, total parenthood. And this phenomenon is also encapsulated by the scene from Schmecks and the City where Charlotte, she has her two toddlers and her toddler like has paint on her hands and she puts it on Charlotte's butt and her dress is like designer and she's like really trying to hold it in. She's falling apart, she's crying, she goes into her pantry and she's literally breaking down. Like that's how I see a lot of American mothers are in their day to day. Like they're so overwhelmed. They don't have a village. They are so stressed out, like, and they're cooped up because a lot of our spaces are not catered to children. So, anyway, but also Charlotte, she has a lot of privilege, right? So when she was having her breakdown, her nanny knocks on the door, she opens it up and her nanny's there, a nanny that she pays for, a nanny that she can't afford. So for Charlotte, this is temporary. You know, like this whole breakdown scene is evidence that it's so hard for women to do it alone. And as the popular saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. Okay, so if you're a mom and you're listening right now, I hope you feel seen and you feel like validated in taking some time for yourself. And it's okay to not always put your kids first because, like I said, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And the American culture of total motherhood, it's hurting a lot of people and it's putting unnecessary pressure on a lot of mothers. Okay. And apparently, other people don't have this culture of total motherhood. And there's been some criticism of the book Bringing Up Bebe about how, number one, it may not be 100% accurate because it is an outsider's point of view of French parenting. So there is some censorship there in terms of what French parents would tell the author during her research. Maybe they're not going to tell her the bad parts because apparently French parents are very strict. So much more than American parents. And that's why the kids are very well behaved because the kids kind of fear their parents. So it's very interesting to see this discourse. But long story short, like we can all learn a lot from each other. And the fifth and final problem, which I think this is also a problem that is so ingrained in a lot of women's heads whenever we talk about having children, is the physical, literally health risks that women face when they engage in pregnancy and childbirth. In fact, it's been said that having a baby, if it were a job, it'll be the sixth most dangerous job ever. And the risks that come with motherhood aren't even exclusive to childbirth. One of the leading causes of death for pregnant women is not with anything in regards to them having the child. It's homicide committed by their partners. And on top of that, there is a running list of reasons as to why women are choosing not to have children, and it's called The Girl with a List. It's by user Unique Thoughts, and the user posted a 20+ page record that is updated whenever people tag the username in the comments of a video. Basically, people say, "Where's the girl with the list?" and then they add that to the list. And it is an exhaustive list of cons during pregnancy, during childbirth, and postpartum. So let's look at a few reasons, okay? Number 8, preeclampsia, pretty much all pregnancy symptoms amplified. UTIs after enduring pregnancy. Constant fever, constant back pain, bleeding gums, constipation, acne breakouts all over the body, hemorrhoids, fatigue, varicose veins, swollen ankles, higher risk of type 2 or gestational diabetes, higher chance of gallstones and infections, painful muscle cramps. Partner might find you repulsive, heavy belly, lightning crotch, might grow breast tissue on your armpits. You're twice as likely to be bitten by mosquitoes, brain fog. And during childbirth, there's like a lot of stuff. So this is a running list. It grows longer day by day. I mean, it's enough to make a lot of women go, no, thank you. Okay. But with all that being said, this isn't to ick you out of pregnancy or childbirth or whatever. At this point, you have already made your decision on that. But the bottom line is that there's a lot of reasons why women are opting out of having children. But that doesn't mean that we should be ignoring or treating mothers as second-class citizens. Like, I don't know, I guess the vibe today is just to make everybody feel seen and validated and showing us how we can help each other and realize how it's so hard for us regular people to fix these macro issues that is causing the low birth rates, the baby bust, the baby mageddon, and shaming women into fixing that instead of fixing the situation, the environment, to be more conducive to bringing more people into the world. Okay, like, no, like, shaming women into doing something for people, for society, is no longer the vibe. Okay, we're woken up. Like, unfortunately for the haters, the women have woken up to our power as gatekeepers of humanity, as gatekeepers of the future. So unless things change for the gatekeepers, like, we're gonna keep gatekeeping. So if people really want to address the birth rate crisis, turn the tides on the birth rate, we have to create environments where parenthood is a choice that is fully supported by society. Because until we've built a future that values both the individual autonomy of women and the collective well-being of the families we want them to have, women will do what they have always done to survive, and that is make advantageous decisions for themselves, whether or not everyone else likes it. That's all I have for you today. I just wanted to let you know that you have so much inherent worth and value in a world that is hell-bent on devaluing you. Now get that bag, bestie. Also, bestie, wake up.